David Amess.
I pay tribute to the honourable members for Great Grimsby and Aberdeen North for the way they have represented their constituents and for the work that they have done for the fishing industry. And of course the honourable member for Great Grimsby will be remembered for the wonderful photographs that he has taken over the years. I also pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for South East Cornwall. She is an expert in these matters, and of course it was her family who paid the supreme sacrifice. I know he isn't in his place at the moment, but I was impressed by the oratory of my honourable friend, the member for Torridge and West Devon. He is a wonderful advocate for the fishing industry, and as I listened to him, I thought if ever I needed an advocate, he would be my first choice, because I'm sure that he could persuade any judge that I was innocent. I am, Mr. Deputy Speaker, a lover of fish. I eat them and I keep them in my various tanks in my office. We're always celebrating when we have births, which we've had recently. One of our guppies had about 250 babies, and unfortunately I have to report to the House today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we've suffered a fatality. And I think I'm calling on counselling to cheer up the members of my team. Now, the area that I represent of Southend West is a coastal community, and of course out of the 646 members of this place, there are relatively few of us representing areas who have fishermen, so if there were more of us, perhaps we would have been more effective in achieving what we actually did. But I do think this has been a first-class debate. And in my own constituency, fishery is a significant source of employment and a significant contribution to our local economy. I wholeheartedly support the local fishermen that I represent, and I'm frustrated to see how they hit a brick wall every time they raise their concerns and first-hand observations with the authorities. So my local branch of the National Federation of Fishermen's Organisation recently had a meeting with representatives for the MMO, Kent and Essex Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority, the Environment Agency, the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture Science, the Thames Estuary Partnership, London Gateway, Port of London Authority and many others. This meeting took place on the 25th of September, and it left my local fishermen completely confused and frustrated, as all of the organisations in attendance seem to be passing the buck and denying their regulatory role and responsibility. So I will now briefly outline the three issues that I'm concerned about: environmental damage, dredging activities and the unreasonable and harmful regulation from Brussels. And I'm very glad that my honourable friend, the member for Waveney, talked about the referendum. Firstly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I refer to the 1970s and the neighbouring council of Basildon, the area that I represented from 1983 to 1997. Following the passage of the Deposit of Poisonous Waste Act in 1972, Pitsea became one of the country's largest hazardous waste dumps. Some honourable members may recall the tragedy which occurred in 1975 when a lorry driver was killed by poisonous fumes at the Pitsea dump. These fumes arose from the mixing of his load of toxic waste with another chemical. And during my time as a Member of Parliament for Basildon, I had a very good relationship with Cleanaway Limited, who ran the site. However, some of my local fishermen believed that the creation of the toxic waste dump in Pitsea was based upon a flawed assumption. It was assumed that Pitsea laid over an impermeable clay bowl into which chemicals could be safely poured. It now appears that it was a clay wedge rather than a clay bowl sloping down straight into the Thames estuary. I do understand that these concerns are based upon suspicion and anecdotal evidence, but it is important that they are taken seriously. It is unacceptable to fob off the representatives of this important industry, which employs 13,000 people across the country and provides up to 20% employment in some of our coastal communities. It is difficult to say if these concerns are exaggerated, but they are genuine concerns of my local fishermen and should be listened to. Secondly, dredging. And before I make these remarks, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I do not want the PR person from the company that I'm going to name to make a phone call to my office next week to be rude and to try and shut me up, frankly. That is not the way to lobby members of Parliament. If constituents have concerns, I, for one, will raise them without having a PR company contact me.
The honourable member. On the point of view of not shutting voices, would you join me in congratulating both the Scottish Fishermen's Federation and the NFFO for all they've done to inform ministers and members of Parliament of the needs of fishermen, and that their voices should be heard and understood in these debates?
I would absolutely congratulate them, and they wouldn't fall into the category that I'm about to share with the House. There has been dredging activity on the Thames estuary by DP World and the London Gateway project. Whereas I appreciate the contribution dredging makes to our economy and the employment it produces, there are concerns that dredging may cause a decline of certain species of fish in our shores. Fishermen in South and West are mainly concerned about the disappearing stocks of dover, sole, smelt and cod. Local fishermen may not have the specialist equipment or the advanced measuring methods that are required for official investigation. However, they do have years, if not generations, of experience in catching fish, and I trust them on what they say about the stocks being reduced. To give an example, I've been told that before dredging began in our area, 100 to 200 sole would be a fair haul, whereas now today it's just 3 or 4. This is absolutely ridiculous. We also have empirical evidence to suggest that the disappearance of sole, smelt and cod does coincide with dredging. It seems that only the area close to the London Gateway project is affected, as stocks of fish in other areas have not been affected. This includes the Kentish Knock area off Clacton and north of Gunfleet Sands. My local fishermen's hands-on experience leads them to believe that dredging is a real problem. They point to the fact that the continued vibration of the dredging action in our area has created the geological movement of liquid from under the ground. This liquid may be coming from toxic waste dumps such as the one that I mentioned earlier. Again, it's just an assumption, but it is something that should be taken seriously. So I would like to see an independent research into this matter involving the fishermen themselves. If such research took place, I think it would give us an answer in terms of the effect of dredging and the declining stocks of certain fish. DP World is a listed company trading on both Dubai and the London Stock Exchanges. They have 60 terminals all around the world and a revenue of over £3 billion. My local fishermen, on the other hand, only ever wanted to catch fish. They depend on the fish to feed them. Something needs to be done to ensure some fairness in this conflict of interest. And I end, Mr Deputy Speaker, with the European Union and some advice I'm going to give to the Minister, whether or not he wants it. The fishermen complain about the latest proposed legislation, regulation coming from Brussels. This shows how out of touch the European regulators are. There is absolutely no way that the one-size-fits-all regulation practiced by Brussels will ever work. My local fishermen are frustrated with the census ban from the European Union on skate and ray fishery due to the alleged overfishing. This ban came into force in October, and there are fears that it will make many businesses throughout the United Kingdom unviable. My local fishermen know firsthand that some species of skate, for instance the thornback ray, are in fact the only species of fish that do not appear to be affected in the Thames estuary. Numbers of skate in our area are so high that the fishermen in my constituency have had catches of half a tonne for a day's fishing. The proposed 20% cut in the quotas for some types of fish for 2015 will be detrimental to the fishing industry of our country, and we need to ensure that this is reverted. Fishermen report that the numbers of thornback ray are at an all-time high, and they struggle to understand why they are being penalised for the alleged overfishing according to the rules set by the European Union decision makers who have no experience whatsoever of local fishing. The full drift net ban proposed by the European Union is another piece of legislation which our local fishermen find frustrating. Drift net is a method used to catch many species around our shores and is probably one of the most environmentally friendly methods of fishing. The European Union's motivation to introduce such a ban is that, I mean, there isn't a problem except off the coast of Italy, with swordfish, tuna, turtles and dolphins accidentally being caught in drift nets. These are not common in our waters, so this just goes to prove how out of touch Brussels is. So I say to my honourable friend the Minister, when many years ago I then met the Commissioner, Emma Bonino, I took her a bunch of red roses and planted a kiss on her cheek. It didn't get me anywhere whatsoever. So I do hope my honourable friend the Minister will use a more effective charm than I did. And I do hope that if my party, the Conservatives, win the next election, and if there is a referendum, at the heart of the renegotiation will be what happens in terms of fishing quotas. So I do wish the Minister well in his meeting next week, but I do hope, as a tribute to the honourable members for Aberdeen North and to Great Grimsby, we achieve what we're all gathered together this afternoon in this chamber for, and that is fairness for the fishermen and fisherwomen.
Yeah. You're right.